Hi everyone, welcome back to the History channel where every week we discuss about interesting topics like history.
Okay, this time we're going to take you viewers on an amazing ride throughout the history of the Soviet Union and how a civil war set off a chain of events that affected the whole world.
Now the Soviet Union was a collection of countries who banded together to create the first socialist state called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, commonly known as the USSR. The state was headed by the Russian government and lasted from 1922 to its eventual downfall in 1991.
The collapse of the USSR was particularly unexpected since it rivaled the United States as the global superpower throughout the second half of the 20th century. Both countries were head-to-head in terms of politics, military, and economy, but not in terms of living standards and well-being of the people. By 1960, the Soviet states
not so fast. Let's rewind a bit and take the viewers back to 1917, the end of the Russian Revolution. Unhappy with Russia's involvement in World War I, Vladimir Lenin seized power and applied Marxism in the government, establishing the Soviet Union.
The Union went on to gain territory during a hostile period with Hitler's Germany, including the Baltic states and Poland. It emerged from World War II as superpower, led by Joseph Stalin, and continued its rivalry with the United States, engaging in political battles and small-scale wars, taking places in foreign countries. This would come to be known as the Cold War.
USSR and America were head-to-head trying to out-achieve each other, and this is where things started going wrong for the Soviets. By 1985, the Soviet Council elected Mikhail Gorbachev as the General Secretary of State. His job was to repair the state's economy and reform legislations in order to improve the living conditions. To do this, he introduced the dual program of perestroika and glasnost, meaning restructuring and openness, which caused profound changes in economic practice, internal affairs, and international relations.
Many of the outlying states used this newfound freedom to express their desire for independence.
Gorbachev's revolutionary program swept communist governments from power and brought an end to the Cold War. He had pursued negotiations with the US President Ronald Reagan, and although there were contrasting views, they managed to settle for a ground. Gorbachev and Reagan took part in 5 summits between 1985 and 1988, and their discussions resulted in the signing of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 1987, which led to an immediate reduction of weapon stockpiles in both countries.
The decision to abandon Soviet control of the communist nations of Eastern Europe was Gorbachev's initiative. Gorbachev oversaw reforms that loosened Soviet grip on states which craved greater independence. He announced that the USSR would drastically reduce the number of troops and tanks that were based in the Eastern Bloc countries. Gorbachev has hoped that his reforms would revitalize and modernize the Soviet Union. Instead, they unleashed social forces that brought about the dissolution of the USSR.
Gorbachev's liberal reforms eventually backfired on him. Many of the smaller Soviet states began to rebel, capitalizing on the newfound freedom that they had been granted with. First, the Baltic states of Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia demanded for independence, and then Armenia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia followed. This put immense pressure on the Soviet government.
By 1991, a group of Soviet leaders calling themselves the State Committee on the State of Emergency decided to take matters into their own hands. In August, they staged a coup and kidnapped Gorbachev in an attempt to remove him from power and prevent the establishment of the new Union Treaty that he had drafted in order to allow Soviet states to even greater independence. This group put him on a house arrest and took control of the USSR government for 72 hours before the coup collapsed, caused by the military's refusal to shoot protesting citizens.
At this point, Gorbachev had lost all of the faith of the Soviet leaders and citizens, failing to rebuild the USSR's economy and letting Soviet states become independent instead. Out of the coup rose Boris Yeltsin, the president of the Russian Republic, who bravely faced down the rebelling Soviet leaders and staged an act to paint Gorbachev as weak, confused, and dependent on Yeltsin.
The final hammer came down on December 8, 1991. Yeltsin, who has capitalized on Gorbachev's decreasing popularity, secretly met with the leaders of Belarus and Ukraine. Together, they agreed to dissolve the Soviet Union and split territories amongst them. Naturally, with Russia having the biggest territory, Yeltsin got the largest slice.
The Soviet Union officially disbanded on December 24 of that same year into 15 independent countries. By law, Russia was considered as the successor of the Soviet Union and was granted the right to keep nuclear weapons and inherited a seat in the United Nations. The very next day, Boris Yeltsin became the first elected Russian president.
Gorbachev remains active in politics and world affairs and found several political parties in Russia and has written opinion pieces for US newspapers, movies, television shows, and even advertisements for various products.
Thanks for watching!
See you in another video.